Please welcome Microsoft MVP superhero Shawn Dorward. Today, he'll be showcasing premiering content in his session, 10 things you can start doing today to save time in BC. Please stick around after Shawn's session for a live Q&A.
Well, hello there, and thank you once again for joining me here at DynamicsCon. This time, 2023, it's spring. Can you believe it? I can't. I love it. But thank you so much for taking the time to vote for the sessions, to be here today, and more specifically, to vote for this particular session, 10 things you can start doing today to save you time at Business Central. Don't forget to use the chat throughout the session, and I'll be around for a live Q&A. So let's go ahead and get started. I'll talk about myself a little bit as we get into the session, but let's go ahead and just have some chat guidelines, if you don't mind. I love the interactive chat, so please feel free to use that. Let me know if you're using this tip. Let me know if you have a tip that kind of complements this tip. I think that's really cool to share with the community as well. Also, if you have a question, I will be here at the Q&A at the end. We have a moderator online to help us. So just go ahead and use caps question and then your question, if you don't mind. It makes it easier as we're scrolling to find that. And then last but most importantly, throw in a +1 if you like this tip, or if you're having a good time, be sure to share that. Let's go ahead and talk about our first time saver. Time saver number 1, keyboard shortcuts. I absolutely love this tip because I myself am one of the folks who kind of forgets that this is an ERP system. Even though we're in a web browser, we kind of think we do all those things, with touch and slide and using our mouse to interact with the system. But keyboard shortcuts can certainly help us be very, very effective and efficient. So I'm going to talk about a few things. First thing first, I'm going to jump over here into Business Central. I'm going to use, I have all the slides here for you, right? So no worries. Feel free to take notes, but also you're going to get these. So F1, Control F1 is the first one I'm going to talk about. Control F1 is our first one. And you'll notice that right here, this is our opening of help. Now, sure, you could pop open you could let go of the keyboard, disengage the keyboard, and go grab the mouse to move up to that question mark. Or you could just Control F1 to pop open the help for the Dynamics doc site help right on the page. That's really helpful, I think. The next one you have is, I'm going to go into sales here. And I'm going to go into sales orders, and I'll just open a sales order. And I can use Control F12. That's a narrow view. I'll use Control F12 to make that wide view. This is really helpful. I don't have to leave the keyboard to see this all throughout the system. Remember, Business Central remembers your view the last time you were on this. So for whatever reason, if you had it in a narrow view last time, it's going to open that way. But Control F12, it's going to get you there. Also, while I'm in here, I'm just going to say this other cool one that I really like is F8. So if you're in these kind of line details, if you use the F8 key, it's like a copy paste of the line directly above. So I'm going to use my tab, and I'm going to go over and tab to my quantity field, and I can do F8 to grab that, or I can shift tab to go back. So throwing in some other keyboard shortcuts there so you get it. But F8, this is great in the journal entry window. It's great in line details like this. Super helpful. While I'm here, I'll show you Alt Q. This is a favorite. This gets you to the Tell Me section, the System Search section. So again, you don't have to disengage the keyboard, go over to the mouse and go up there. That may feel like that's silly to kind of worry about, but it is a big time saver when you can just jump right to it. So now the next one is the escape. So I have the sales order window open, and I'm just going to hit the escape key. And it's going to close that window. And I don't mean the window in your browser. I mean the window within Business Central. So sometimes we'll open up the sales order, then we'll open up the customer card, then maybe we'll open up an address field. And we have these kind of layered windows. The escape key just goes back one and back one and back one. And even here, if I hit the escape key again, that's all I did. It took me back one more to my home screen. And the last one here I want to share with you, and I'm going to put a link in here, but the last one I'm going to share with you is refresh. So you have refreshing of the data within Business Central. which is Control F5, refresh the entire page, F5 to refresh the data within Business Central. Those are nice if you're waiting. Maybe your colleague is posting a credit memo and you don't see that in your list. Use that shortcut. So that's tip number one, using keyboard shortcuts. I have a couple here. Oh, I almost forgot my absolute favorite. I can't believe I forgot this. That is the zoom in and zoom out. If you're like me and your eyes are not as good as they once were, the control, this is a typical Windows behavior, but the control and the plus sign is going to go ahead and zoom Business Central in on your browser, and the control minus sign and is going to zoom it out. And notice it's a dynamic switch to all of the things on your page so that it fits nicely. I love this. Don't squint. If you don't have to, use that keyboard shortcut and zoom in, zoom out. Also works control and zoom up and down on your mouse if you already have your mouse. Here's a nice little link. I'll post that over there in the chat. Give me a second to do that. Boop, there it is. That's a link to not a complete list, but a great list out there for keyboard shortcuts and varying functionality throughout the system. Let's get on to time saver number 2. Time saver number 2, Outlook add-in. You probably heard about this when you first started looking into Business Central. If you hadn't, well, you probably should have, because it is a very impressive interoperability function of Business Central. And I'm going to show you exactly what it's all about. This super efficient and can incredibly to help you save time in a big way. So first you need to get it. Now I'm just going to go into the tell me and search for get the Microsoft or get the Outlook add-in. Easy enough. I'm going to open that up. What this is going to do is going to give you an option here. So we're going to do this quite simply. You can have your administrator make this available across to everybody in the organization, or you could do it yourself. A real simple wizard to help guide you through, and it's even going to send you a sample email. Now that was easy, but what about it, right? Let's take a look at what we can do with. I'm going to slide my Outlook over here. Try to anyway. So here's the email that comes out. Notice now I'm going to download the picture so this is nice and easy to see. On my home, I have this Contact Insights under the subcategory for this add-in, Business Central. Contact Insights, that's what this is opens up. I have it pinned. You may want to pin it as well, because if you're going to constantly use Outlook to interact, and the idea behind this is efficiency. You're in Outlook, you get an email from a client, a vendor, whomever, and then you close Outlook, you go over to your browser, and now you're distracted because Facebook is open and you got to see what Sally's up to, that kind of stuff. Or you can leave yourself in Outlook and just interact with the real live connection to Business Central, and that's what we have here. So in this particular case, I'm going to say, this email address is for this company and this customer. And look at this. How incredible is this? It is everything about this particular account that I might want to use to interact directly from within Outlook. So maybe I get an email from this particular customer. Let's jump over here and I'll kind of say, I want to order a chair. So let's open that up. What contact is that associated with? We'll pick that contact. In a real environment, you shouldn't have to do this. I'm in a demo environment, but I can see, okay, they have some past due amount. They want to order a new chair. They have a past due amount. I can right from here. I don't have to leave and go to Business Central. I can see the invoice that's past due. I can even click and see what that was. And look, wouldn't you know it, they ordered 6 chairs. This invoice is still past due. Maybe I can directly respond to them from Outlook and take a screenshot of that and say, hey, can you forward me payment? Or maybe they're within credit. And there's no problem, but we wanted to create that new sales order. So we could just go to new sales order, let the system in Outlook pull the data from within Business Central right into Outlook and let me create the sales order right here where I can just simply, when I'm finished entering the details, post this and email it off for the client. Now that is powerful. Take that, Oracle. Let's go into our next tip. That's Outlook add-in. Please be sure to check that out. Very, very helpful. That's not smoke and mirrors. It really works that quickly and that well. All right, back to it. Let's talk about time-saving tip number 3. This one has to do with how we enter data. Now, I already kind of gave a little sneak peek into the F8 keyboard shortcut, which is that copy and paste from the line above. So I don't want to really get into that too much here and try to build on this a little bit in a different way. If you're like me and you do a lot of data entry, I'm going to come into this sales order. I'm going to talk about the importance of something called quick entry. And so if you have all the information, and this might be more applicable on the AAP side, but you have your information and you're going to go start keying into Business Central. And if I want to create a new item here, I can create my new item and I can hit the tab. Notice when I hit tab, it goes to that field. Next is item reference number. Next is description. Next is location. Next is quantity, etc. But really what I want to do is I want to be able to put my item number in and then go to the quantity, and that's it. The rest the system is doing for me. So that's called quick entry. And how we do that, how we modify quick entry, is in the personalize. And this takes just a little bit of time to configure for you, specifically for you, but then it's that way forever. And I think you're going to really like this when you take the time to invest in setting it up. So if I look at the field item reference and I just use this drop down, it says include in quick entry. That means it's already excluded, so that's good to go. I don't need it. Let's go to description, is also excluded. Location code. I'm going to pretend this says it was included, and we're going to switch it to exclude it. But in this case, I don't need location code, and I want to exclude it from quick entry. So exclude it from quick entry. Now you might be thinking, but Shawn, when you hit tab before, it still stopped at item reference number, and it still stopped in description. I saw that in chat. That's okay. I'm going to explain how to do it. So what the little bit of a difference here is when we're finished setting up the things to include and exclude from quick entry is we simply use the keyboard to key in. Let's see. Pick my item. I'm going to use the enter key now instead of tab. Enter is going to follow the quick entry field rules, whereas tab is going to go to every column. So if I train myself to use the enter key, and a lot of legacy systems use the enter key, so this can be quite helpful, maybe cut down the learning curve a little bit. So I'm going to enter in my item number and I'm going to hit enter. Now when I hit enter, you see what happened. It went right over to quantity. I can use the space bar to say okay. I went right over to quantity and I'm going to hit number 1 and then enter. And I could turn off quantity to assemble, etc., etc. That's quick entry. It can save you quite a bit of time for highly repetitive tasks like sales line order entry, line item details, and for purchasing. Now, that is one method to speed up data entry here. Another thing we could do is use this share and edit this in Excel. So if we have a lot of data we need to update, or maybe it's a blanket purchase order or a journal entry that we're doing in a recurring way, what we can do is edit this in Excel and modify the information and then publish it back into Business Central. Sometimes that's easier. Sometimes that takes more time than it's worth. So you find the balance, but quite often I'm seeing that with larger data sets, and that probably would make sense if you had, quite a few things that you're ordering consistently and you want to just kind of copy and paste it into that connection, that edit in Excel connection. So let me drag this over into our shared screen here. As it pulls the data into Excel, it's going to use my authentication, same authentication that I use to log into Business Central. So if I don't have access to the data, it's not going to let me do it. But notice here, I slide over and here's my quantities. And I'm just going to make all these quantities 99 so that you can see all I have to do is publish this. It's going to push the data back into Business Central. And if I refresh the data using my shortcut of F5, it'll update my quantities to 99. How cool is that? That's a simple example of how we can save time using different ways of entering the data. Don't forget that F8, I showed that in an earlier tip, but definitely worth exploring, as well as our general edit in Excel, which you can use in so many different places. It's quite powerful. The next up, time saver number 4 is saving filter lists. Now, filter lists, maybe there's a better way of describing these. In the GP kind, Dynamics GP or Great Plains world, we call them smart lists. Maybe we just simply call them that now. But these lists that live within Business Central, the system sort of is run based on these lists, or at least the end user experience is sort of centered around these lists. And we can make sure, I want to make sure that you're aware of how we can save them and how these can be properly used in your workplace environment. Let me know what you think and how you use save lists in the comments section. But let's jump in and talk about this a little bit. So I'm going to go over into, I'm going to use my escape key to go back to the home screen. And then I'm going to go into my chart of accounts. And from here, I'm going to take a look at one of my charts registers. So let's look at, let's see, it's always good to go to the revenue account in our demo system. So let's take a look at that. I'm going to slide down. I could look at my AR, but there's usually good data in our revenue accounts. So let's take a look here. And when I click on that, because I'm clicking on that link, that flow link from within the chart of accounts, it already knows that I want to filter this by the GL account 40200. So you see my filter is turned on. So if it's not already there, maybe you go into a list from a different way and it's not there. So you simply use the filter icon to turn on the filter pane. You can add different ways. Now this particular one is the 4200 account from, well, no date restrictions yet. So let's go ahead and maybe I'm responsible for reconciling this account, or I do some analysis on it. We're going to do posting date, and we're going to also say we want this to be for last year. So I'm going to say for 2022 through 12/31/2022. There we go. And that'll filter my list down. Boom. Just like that. So you can probably see up here, I already have this saved off, but basically what we need to do is we need to come up and do save as and give it a name. So now we always have this list. Now, what do we want to do with this list? We'll talk about that in our next step for saving filtered lists, but this is really powerful to just save it to always have it. So anytime I want to see the 4200 account, I can quickly come in to my save list and click on this and see 4200 for the previous year. Now let me show you another way that saving lists can be quite helpful. So imagine you are responsible for a particular client or a particular vendor, and you get phone calls or emails from them often. I'm going to go back and I'm going to go to my menu and I'm going to go into my customer list. The idea here is that you get a phone call or maybe an email from your favorite client or somebody that you're working with all the time. And instead of having to go through the 4, 5, 6 different clicks it takes to get them, let's go ahead and just filter down all of our posted sales invoices by the customer number, and we'll just use 10,000 for this example, and we're going to save it, and we'll save it customer 10,000, which is Addin. So now I have that saved. So now anytime I have an interaction with this particular customer or client, I could quickly come to that list. And then from here, I can start to do my own filtering. Another really cool thing here is this really, this friendly share button here. So we can share this out into Excel so that we have a dynamic refreshable report in Excel that we can always be using as well, which is very powerful. So saving lists, very important. Make them yours, make it part of your business process so that while you're interacting with clients, vendors, etc., it's easy to get to. Also, another great one is if you're an accountant and you're responsible for certain account reconciliations, just having a list of your accounts and filters. I think I kind of alluded to that with the 4200, although that's a balance sheet or a P&L account. Having your list of accounts there with the proper date filters. And we'll talk about that coming up next as another time saver. Speaking of time savers, time saver number 5 is bookmarks. And we're going to talk about bookmarks. This might take just a minute. Hang tight with me and follow me a little bit along this journey, because there's a couple things that I think are pretty important to talk about. And as I work with folks around the globe, everybody sort of does it differently. But at the end of the day, I think everybody's trying to do it in a very similar way, because naturally we want to be more efficient. We want to be quicker in what we do and how we get to the data, especially if you're on a phone call or a Teams call. Email is not so much. You might not worry about the extra 15 seconds or 20 seconds something takes, but on a phone call, that feels like a very long time. So talking about bookmarks, in the system, we're going to talk about two different kinds of bookmarks. In the system, there is a bookmark where you can anchor or dock a page, a form, etc., directly to your home screen in Business Central. Notice this aged accounts receivables. If I click this report dialog box, I have bookmarked. Really easy for me to get to. Try to get to a report in Business Central in just one click. This is not bad. I'm telling you, that's quite helpful. More on that in a minute, but you could do this for many areas in the system. Now, if you notice, I also have chart of accounts here. We can't bookmark the specific list. Maybe you can, and I just don't know. So if you know a way to bookmark in Business Central the specific list that you filtered down, let me know in the comments. But if you notice, it's taking me here. But the next thing I want to talk about is using your browser bookmarks. And I prefer Firefox. I don't know why. I've been using it for a long time, creature habit maybe, but I do love that no matter which machine I'm on, if I'm logged into the same profile in my browser, that's available for Chrome, Edge, Firefox, and all the popular browsers out there that Business Central is compatible with, your profile can be synced across devices, which is really great, because this next part of this tip, I think probably the more important part of this time-saving tip, is using your browser. Now, a lot of folks use favorites, bookmarks across the top of your browser. If you do, and that's your preference, fantastic. I'm not trying to suggest you need to switch to the left. Mine is on the left, mostly because I think that's kind of how most things are in the Microsoft space. There's blades or panels either on the left or right hand side. We kind of reserve the top for the operating or the system ribbon. So I use my bookmarks on the left. Anyway, long story short, if you prefer the top, so be it. What I'm suggesting here is we make a Business Central shortcut folder. And I have one here. And I'm in Shawn's online store, which is my second favorite retail spot next to that big river in South America. Shawn's online store. And now what I want to do is I want to say, maybe let me go into, remember that chart of account list? Let's go to that. And I'm just going to bookmark. Let me open up my filters. It was on revenue, I think. Yeah, it was on the 4,200. That's right. If I'm going too slow, nudge me in the comments so I can hurry up. So now here, what I could do is I could here's my 4,200 for previous year. Now, I couldn't bookmark this particular filter list into my header in Business Central, but simply taking this and dragging and dropping it into my bookmarks menu in my browser. Let me see if I can actually be successful in doing that. There we go. I think I probably did it twice. Now I have this here. So no matter where I am, I could just simply click that bookmark. And let's talk about this, because there's so many good examples of this, I think. If I'm on the phone with somebody, get an email, or I'm performing my tasks on a monthly basis, just having this. And maybe you want to rename this a little differently. Maybe you want to rename it to the company. And maybe you want to rename it to something a little more, specific to you. Here, I'm in my same environment on my tenant in a different company called Cronus. And I could go to that same account, 4,200, in a different company. And this is why I said maybe you want to switch how you name your bookmark, but I can do the same thing. And so I can have a tab for Shawn's online store, looking at this account information, and a tab for Cronus, with the same information and bookmark these, right? So I can take this one and drag it down here. Also, most browsers are Control D, lets you bookmark it, but I just like to drag and drop. So here I'm just going to edit this, and I'm going to say, hey, this was Cronus 4200. And this one was Shawn's online store 4200. Now I have them very easily at my fingertips. And imagine now if I want to do one more, like if I go into, where did I put that? Did I have one for vendors? I may have set it up for vendors. But if I'm always working with the same client or the same vendor, or dealing with the register for sales individual, or any of those things where I have a list that controls the data set that I'm looking for. You saw how many times I had to click that? 3-4 times. Instead, what I really could do is just filter this out, create my favorite, save my list, and bookmark it on my browser bookmarks. Beauty of this is, again, if you kind of go back full circle, if I'm using a modern browser with a profile, and I pick up my Surface or my work laptop, or my work laptop's out of commission, I get a new one, I just log back in and have all of my shortcuts. That is a big time saver. I don't want to beat this up, but it's also fantastic to use for different companies, specific reports. Reports are hard to find in the system. I think it's an excellent way to do to get quick access to things in your system. So be sure to check that out. Set it up. Just want to take a pause real quick and say hello again. My name is Shawn Dorward. Thank you again for joining us here at DynamicsCon, and specifically me during this session, and throwing one of your valuable votes to hear this topic. I hope through the first 5, you've at least picked up some good fun tips that either you or your colleagues can use. We have more to go. We're not done, so stick around. We're not done. Don't forget to interact in the chat. Just a little bit about me. I write on my personal blog space, lifehacks365.com. There's a link here. I'll drop a quick link in the chat as well. I write about all things, Business Central, GP, Excel, Power BI. Yeah, so not all things, but those things. I also have some recordings out there that you may be interested in. Some of my previous DynamicsCon recordings, some of the other conferences I've attended to that the session has been made public. I'm the Vice President of Service and Delivery at SA Global. SA Global is an international organization that services and supports and implements pretty much all things Microsoft, but in a dynamic space. We are a partner, an 11-time partner of the year. So if you're looking for a partner or you need some sort of help, feel free to find me on LinkedIn or Twitter, if you will, or on my personal side. I also will be presenting at some other events this year. Some of note is the DynamicsCon live event in Scottsdale, Arizona, coming up in May, which I'm really, really excited about. Also, we'll be at the partner-only event, Directions, which is in Orlando. And I am working on my session submissions for Summit North America, which will be in Charlotte, North Carolina, my backyard. Please come and join me at any of these events. Without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. Back into the last half of our time-saving tips. Time-saving tip number 6. Running out of fingers. Time saver tip number 6 is searching and reporting on shortcut dimensions. And I put this in because I recently have been working with a few clients actually, and a hat tip to some of my fellow presenters and MVPs. Carrie, I came across this on Carrie's session, and it's quite a useful tip that when an individual is looking for information beyond Global 1 and Global 2 dimensions. And how we do this is we can search for the shortcut dimensions. I'm going to walk through that a little bit. So if I jump over to my 4200 shortcut in the bookmark that we set up, to the save filter that we set up in Business Central for, in this case, the Cronus company, single click, get there with ease. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how we can see this the shortcut dimensions. So here we are on the 4200 saved list. that we use our bookmark to access. Real easy, one click. And what we see here, you notice we've got our department code and customer group code. In my system, that's global dimension 1 and 2. And we don't have the ability to add. You might be thinking maybe it's in the personalize, add columns. It's not there. But if we need to search beyond, if we need to filter this beyond global 1 and global 2 and use our other shortcut dimensions, which are valuable in our system. So I think this is quite helpful. Now this is moved around a little bit, but I want to point it out. So we're going to go to our ellipse here. And if it didn't move again, we're going to go to related entry, other, GL dimension overview. Easy as pie. I'll have that in the slide. We'll go to GL dimension overview. This is going to take our same data set that you have active, and we have to show the matrix. This one more click, show the matrix. Now, I don't know of a way to bookmark this window. I've tried, and if you know of a way to quickly get to this window differently than what I just showed, please let me know in the comments. It is a 2-3 click step process, but I'm going to Control F12 to widen that from our keyboard shortcuts, and now you can see I see all my shortcut dimensions in here, and I can filter to these as well. So that's a nice way to track that down. And you can also, using another one of our tips, move this to Excel for review and make it easier for you to get that analytic information that you need. I want to point out that I thought it was important to show out that even though you can set the dimension filter on these data sets in the list view, I couldn't figure out a way to get the shortcut dimension to actually show. So let me know in the comments if that's something maybe I just need to be shown how to do, if there's a workaround, but I couldn't get those to show. So I want to push in this data to Excel and do my pivoting there. That's saving time, trying to get the information from your shortcut dimensions. That was time-saving tip number 8. We'll move on. Using the report scheduler. Now, this is a beauty, and I love this one. And it takes a little bit. It's a little sensitive at the same time. You probably want to work with your partner or maybe your system admin internally just to make sure that we're not crashing the system by running these reports in the background. But the idea behind this is twofold. One, you have the need to get some information, and you want it in an easy access way. Now you can go. I think our example here on the home screen is I'll escape back. On our home screen was the age receivables report. Yeah, age receivables report. So I was able to get that, dock that, bookmark that, if you will, to my home screen in Business Central. Not bad, but basically what I'm saying is, well, what if I want this to just be given to me, to be delivered to me? And we can schedule these to be delivered to you in your report inbox, which is accessible. It's like a drawer on your home screen in Business Central. And even more so, I'm kind of building up to the part that I think is my favorite part, is if you get it in you can get this in a PDF or Excel or Word, and they become, in my mind, sort of like snapshots, if you will. So if you want to see what the age receivables was as of last Friday, now some reports give you that aged as of option, and maybe age, think beyond age. What was the customer balance last week? Or what was the inventory status last week? Or what was fill in the blank? These PDFs can help create sort of a snapshot of that information in that moment in time. Well, how you get to it is you find your report. Now, I don't think this is possible for account schedules or recently renamed to financial reports. I may be wrong. If you know of a way, please let me know, but I couldn't quite figure that out. But for most reports, if you choose send to, you're going to see all of the output options and then one bonus one, which is schedule. And so for this particular one, I'm going to schedule it. And this opens up the schedule window. And from in here is where we tell it how often we want to run it, what report output type we want. Notice here I could do this in Word, Excel. I can print it, or I can put it to PDF. When do I want to run it next? And what's the or with the next run date formula, which we'll talk about in our next tip. And we hit OK. And what this will do then is every time this gets triggered by the rules that you create, if I scroll down here to my report inbox, that PDF will be available in my report inbox. Now, I have one in here. This is from 11/27. It's from now, right now. How about that? So it ran it on demand, and here it is. So now this PDF will be available, and then when it runs again, I'll have another PDF available with that snapshot. So this is all set up and managed and created through job queue. So like I said, I think there's an element of caution that needs to be applied, but can be very helpful, very powerful, and save you the time of having to do this activity each and every time you need to do it. So what do you think about scheduling report? These can be modified, incidentally. I thought that was a great add-on tip to this one, primarily because if you create it and you haven't put all of the proper controls in, or it's not behaving the way that you expected it to from the options that you put in, you can always go into the job queue and modify that job queue entry. You can even turn them off. So maybe you set it up and it's not exact and it's not anything what you want. You could turn it off. Very good. Very cool. Let me know if you like that one, if you're using that one, if you know of any gotchas to report scheduling. Love to hear from you in the comments. Look at that. So we got time saver number 7 out of order. That's okay. Probably because I did a review and I thought, well, the date formula might make more sense coming after. Go me for being prepared. But nonetheless, the next one is using date formulas. And there are so many different ways you can use date formulas. It is a key separator, a key identifier for what makes Business Central different than other tools. I think it is. There's many things, but this is one of them. And date formula is that. And it is a big time saver. And so what I want to talk about here is I've got, these can be used in job queues, like I just showed. If you're running reports, maybe you want to run them at the end of every month. Maybe you want to run them on the 7th working day of the month for the previous month. Date formulas can get you there. So don't worry about it being too dynamic. We could definitely create that. But another place that you could use this is on our saved lists. Remember, we talked about our saved lists. And in that particular one we were looking at was the 4200. I'm going to jump in here and notice that we had our dates. Now, this was last year. Maybe this is an annual reconciled account. Instead of every year having to come in here to change my dates from 2022 to now, next year it'll be 2023, I can take some of the tips from date formulas and incorporate that into my lists, my report scheduler, what have you. It's not everywhere. Please know that there are areas that it won't work with, but a lot of the places where it matters the most, where things are repetitive and need to be dynamic, then you can use date formulas most times. So take note here on my previous year report, I have that date, what looks to be keyed there as 1/1/2022 to the end of the year. But if I click on that, you can see that I actually have the date formula in there of -1y minus cy through, that's the ... cy minus 1y. Now, yeah, that's a little cumbersome, totally agree. And there might be a better way to represent this. If you know of a better way to represent the start of last year to the end of last year about using date formulas, let me know in the chat. This is the way that I came up with it. It works. But basically, that's just one way you can use date formulas to save you time so that you don't have to revisit those things. This is fantastic to use in recurring batches as well. Job queues, saved report filters. I'm trying to think what else, anything. Yeah, tell me what you use it for, actually. I'd love to hear what you find the date formula to be most useful for if you're using. If not, let me know what you're looking forward to using it the most. This is great for recurring entries. I love it. Here is an example. I got this from That Nav Guy. Thank you, That Nav Guy, for publishing this blog post. I use this. I have a bookmark in my web browser bookmarks, and I thought I would share it with you here. I love it because it actually tells us the example. If the date is this, using this date formula will get you this. And that's actually how I came up with the from the start date of last year to the end date last year. There are others for sure, but these are some of the most common. So that's tip number 7, what was 8, but now 7. And we're going to do great math and jump into time saver number 9. time saver number 9. We're almost there at the end. Stay with me. Give me a +1 if you're using any of those tips. Which one? Don't forget to post your questions in there. We'll do our best to answer them. Time saver number 9 is referring to batch posting. This comes direct from end user experience with one or two of the clients that I've worked with recently. And basically the backstory is we're posting multiple sales orders or purchase orders, I think was the actual example, and multiple meaning a lot, not just 2. Our example is going to walk through 2, but you have to wait for all of that processing to finish. And goodness, if somebody else is doing the same thing, you're likely to get an error because there's some sort of lock that goes onto the table during this processing. If you've experienced that, let me know how you get around it if you're not using batch posting. I'll share the link to this here. I'll post it in the chat. But basically, this is quite simple. It's available for sales and receivable setup, also available for purchasing and payable setup. Pretty easy. Here's the options: post with job queue, post and print with job queue, notify on success, and report output type PDF. Now, 9.2 here, bonus tip, is if you use PDF, it will actually drop that PDF into the report inbox on your Business Central home screen, which I find to be quite helpful. Basically, we're going to go in here. We're going to select our multiple. Once it's set up, we're going to select our multiple purchase orders or our multiple sales orders, and we're going to go to post, batch. Now, there's not a batch we're adding these to. It's a batch because we've selected more. And I want to just make sure to not take for granted whether or not you're aware of how that works. So let's do purchase orders. So here we are in our list of purchase orders. And what we're going to do is we want to post more than one. We're going to choose this select. And we're going to pick which ones we want to post. We're going to go to post and post batch. Incidentally, keyboard shortcut Control A will select all of them for you. So we'll do select more and then Control A to select all, or you can hit the top. That is tip number 9, batch posting. That brings us to our last tip for today, our last time-saving tip for today. And this is Power Automate, specifically Power Automate in a way to synchronize data from one entity in your environment on your tenant to other entities. So the story here is if I have multiple companies and they're fairly much in line, which is quite often the case, not a requirement, but quite often the case, we want things to happen in one entity and also automatically happen in the other entities. So I've got Shawn's online store in South Carolina, Shawn's online store in Missouri, and I have those two set up as different entities. And every time I create a vendor or a vendor, I want it to automatically create it in the other entities as well. Now, this does require a premium license through Automate, but I was able to set this up quite easily. I built the flow saying when the record is created, get the data and create it in the other entity. And every time I do that in that order, it's going to seamlessly create that record in the other company for me, saving me that time. Now, if you don't need it, let's say you don't need 2 out of every 20, that's okay. If you don't need it, they're free to delete and it's not going to cause any harm. But that is tip number 10, using Power Automate. If you're interested in knowing how to use Power Automate for this kind of information, feel free to continue here at DynamicsCon Virtual. I know at the live event, there's some good topics around this as well, and all throughout the community in general. That brings us to the end of our time here, at least during this segment. Our next segment, don't go anywhere, right over here on the other side is our live Q&A. Once again, my name is Shawn Dorward. Thank you for being here. I look forward to talking with you in just a minute.